So I made it my aim to create the simplest, the most straight to the point plant grow light guide ever known to PlantTube, because besides fertilizers, I feel like that's the next most complicated thing sometimes to figure out, and it really doesn't have to be. A lot of the times we go to Amazon to find where we can get these grow lights, and there's tons of them, like literal hundreds of thousands of tons of grow lights, and it's really hard to weed through all the nonsense that's on there. So of all the features that are usually listed for grow lights, whether it's wattage, voltage, Kelvin, color temperature, PPFD, lux, lumen, foot candle, all of those things, the only ones that you actually need to be concerned about that actually make a difference in the growth of your plant is number one, color temperature, and number two, the actual brightness of the light, which is like, of course, the one thing we all want to know, like, how bright is the light? Is it super bright? But what are we measuring that off of? So first, like I mentioned, color temperature. That's really easy to find in grow lights. A lot of them will tell you straight up right in the listing, like, hey, this is 2000K, 6500K, but what does that actually mean? And just like the name suggests, it's just about the color of the light, how warm or cool the light is. Now, the closest thing to sunlight is going to be somewhere in between, which is going to be about 4,000 to 6,000 Kelvin. And most of the lights come in that range, which is full spectrum, which again is in that range of 5,000 to 6,000 K or Kelvin. So that's not going to be hard to find. But a lot of the times we see these lights that can have a red hue or a purple hue or a blue hue, and they're cute. They might be cute, but they're not going to do much for your plants because they're not the closest to full spectrum, which is similar to, or which equals, I should say, natural sunlight. So try to stay away from those color lights unless you're doing some other stuff, which you know the plant will thrive in those colors, if you know what I'm talking about. However, after you know the color temperature, honestly, the only reason I worry about color temperature is because I don't really like yellow lights. I think in this cabinet here, the lights are a little yellow, and I was kind of stuck with those because my cabinet is so narrow that I had to get what could fit in my cabinet versus what I actually really wanted. So if you get something a little lower, like closer to 2,000-3,000 Kelvin, you're going to get a warmer yellow light. Whereas if you go up a bit higher to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 Kelvin, you're going to get more of a daylight white bright light, which is what I prefer. It's the most neutral. So I believe I put a diagram on the screen that will help give you a visual. If you're a visual learner, there you go. Beyond the color of your light, the number one most important feature that you need to know in order to pick your light is how bright the light is. Again, of all of those features, wattage, voltage, there's only a few that actually talk about the brightness of the light. And to be honest, it's not very advertised in the listing of these light ads. So that's what makes it hard to know what's actually important, because you got to scroll through sometimes these listings to actually see the, what do you call it, the measurement or the metric that tells you the brightness of the light. Mia, I'm gonna need you to stop. Thank you. So the metric that is most specific to plants, which was actually new to me, I'll tell you about the one that I was using before to pick out my lights, but this one that I learned about, which is the most specific to plants, is PPFD or PAR. I'll put it what it stands for on the screen, but in simple terms, it's basically how much light is reaching the leaves of your plant so that it can actually photosynthesize. Like how much light can it use, you know? And that is measured in a way that I will not get into, but simply said, the range that you want to look for of this PPFD is anywhere between 200 to 400. So I was introduced to the metric recently, PPFD, by Haus Bright lights. They sent me this light to review and to try out for my plants, which I actually really did end up liking. And it's funny because after I got the light, I reached out to them and said, hey, you know, how much lumen does this light put out? So I could kind of compare it to other lights that I had, like how bright is this light? And they were like, oh, we actually don't use lumen, we use PPFD. And so I had to do a deep dive and do some research. So I was like, all right, you know, they coming through with the good quality specific information. So I went off of that, and they said that their light puts out 288 PPFD, which is within that optimal range of 200 to 400 for plants. So my plants have really liked it. So when I started using this light, I did notice it was nice and bright. bright and the plants were responding well. My Hoyas were still sun stressing, my plants were still growing. I didn't have any plants, you know, dying off or wilting or anything like that. So my plants was loving this light. I was using this light in this lamp here, which I really like because it's stylish. You don't have to have an ugly light. You can have a nice stylish light and it still be helpful for your plants. And another cool thing about Haus Bright light is that they have an app that you can use with this light bulb. So it has Bluetooth capabilities, I guess. I haven't tried it yet, but I've just been looking at it on their listing, and basically you can time your light. You can change the color temperature of your light. You can change the brightness of your light all from your phone. That is like the best ever, especially when you're going away on vacation. And you can also time when the color temperature or brightness changes to mimic actual sunlight. Like, that is so wild to me. I will definitely be using that in the future, but it's a pretty cool light. So it looks good, it works well. It's a great light. I do like it. So I do believe I have a discount code for this light as well. I will be putting it in the description below so that you guys can check it out if you'd like. So that takes me to the next type of measurement that you could look at is the lumen, which is simply how much light is this light putting out. And Stanzi has a different range of bright, you know, some lights that are less bright and to more bright. This was somewhere in the middle because I did have a light that was brighter than this bulb here. And it kind of tripped my light. So I was like, all right, let me go somewhere in the middle. So to explain the lumen, like I said, is simply just how much light the light source is putting out. And so for plants, what you would want to look for, you would want to be somewhere between 2,000 to 7,500 lumen. That's going to give you sufficient light for your plants. And the one that I had before this one was 6,000. And that blue, I think I might still have, I think I shared it in my Amazon plant favorites, and it was like a kind of a corn light, and it was super bright. The only thing you'd want to be cautious with that type of light, which someone did point out to me as well, which is true, if you don't use it with a shade, the light is going to go out to the sides. It's not going to go straight down. But I was using it with a shade, so it was fine. Whereas having something like this where it's more directed and then something like this as well where it all goes straight, it's gonna make sure that where you're directing it, the plant is getting the light. So I did like that first one that I used. It was super strong, but it was too strong for my light. I went down to something like this, which was only 3,000 lumen, which was perfect. And then I tried this one here that Haus sent me, which worked really well. When I had to get a app, Photon, which is where I got a lot of this information from about understanding the different features of light, and it was explaining how to use their light meter. So it was really easy to use it. I just did it on my phone, downloaded the app, and so I was able to measure again like how much light these are putting out, and they were about the same. And also, of course, it depends on the distance of the plant from the light, how much it's going to reach the light. It does measure the ppfd as well. So if you're curious about how much light your light source that you have is, you definitely can try downloading that app, Photon. Thank you so much, Haus, for sending me this light. I really do like it. And I might have mentioned this before to you guys, I'm not sure, but I put grow lights. They're really just light bulbs, but I put grow lights in my ceiling so that my room, whenever I turn on my light, is going to be similar to the grow lights that I have specifically directed onto my plants. Of course, because it's up in the ceiling, it's not giving the same strength of light, but the idea is there. And the point is that I definitely want to get these for that because they're dimmable like my lights as well. And I want to be able to time it from my phone, like when I'm away on vacation. Like, that's perfect, you know? So anyways, that is it, guys. Like, that's literally it. That's all you need to know is how bright the light is and what's the color temperature of the light. From this point forward, I'll go a little more into detail for people who want a little more information. But if that's all you wanted to know, that's all you need to know. You can click off right now, go on Amazon and look for you a light that has either a lumen that is within 2 to 7,500,000 or a ppfd that's within 2 to 400. That's all you need to know. Go ahead, fly like a bird. find your grow light that you love. There is one other metric I should mention because you do see it often, which is lux or foot candle, which is the same thing. It just depends on what country you're from, will determine which measurement you use, but they measure the same thing, which is how much light is hitting a surface. So not just how much light is coming out, but how much of that light is actually reaching the surface. So again, that's a little more specific than the measurement of lumen. And to have a range of what you should look for with lux, for plants, you want your lux or foot candle to be between 800 to 1600. And so it's the same thing. When you go on Amazon and you search for a plant, you can say search for a light, you can say grow light with 900 lux, and it will bring up something that has that in the somewhere in the listing to kind of narrow it down for you. But I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's a lot of scrolling. It's a lot of scrolling to find it when you're looking at like the strips and things of that nature. But the bulbs I found are much easier to find, quality bulbs. If you'd like more information, let's talk more about the types of lights, because my favorite, if you cannot tell, are the bulbs. I love using bulbs because they're versatile. I can put them in any lamp. It'll match any style. You can put it as a pendant and like put it hanging from the wall as a pendant or the ceiling. It's just so versatile. I love bulbs. However, these are not for every situation, right? You might have a cabinet or a shelf where you need something else and you need to find these type of grow lights here, the strip ones. Again, not my favorite, but only because it's hard to find the specs that actually matter. They sell these grow lights endlessly on Amazon, but very few of them actually tell you how many lumen it is or the ppfd. Like, they're just not handing out that information. So I did find a couple. I will put them in the links below so that you guys can know specifically, which ones. If you don't feel like doing this search yourself, I'll just put them in the description below. But that's really it. I did put a question box a while ago on Instagram about, what kind of information you guys would want on lights. And it was all generally the same, like which wasn't the best, how to look for the ones that are actually helpful. And that's it. How bright it is, the color temperature, and the style of the light you like, and just keep it at that. Like I said, I don't want this to be complicated because it's not. And that's literally the only steps that I go through. So that's it, guys.